Welcome to New Realities. My name is Alan Steinfeld. On this program, I like to investigate the nature of a personal evolution and revolution that's happening in this country, really giving the rights back to the people, really about who we are as an evolving civilization. Tonight's guest is someone who works in a sort of legal end of that, He's a lawyer for the people. His name is Carl Pearson. Thanks, Carl. You were a corporate lawyer.
Oh, all the way. That was the only thing that meant anything to the people at Harvard Law School. You wanted to join Wall Street. That was the goal. You wanted to go to Wall Street and be a part of it.
Is that part of a conditioning at Harvard? You're here to feed the system, sort of, as a...
Well, they tell us at Harvard, at least back when I went to Harvard Law School, and my father went to Harvard Law School, they tell us about the grandeur of the law, and that the law really is there and it's enforceable, that we can do something. If you only learn the law, then you can really use the law to help people. And the truth of it is, after all these years, that the law isn't as clear as anyone makes it out to be, and that judges have the discretion in many or most cases to go either way. So it isn't like you can really predict what your rights are under law or enforce the rights that you think you have. And then there's the other problem, that the cost of trying to go into court is so staggering that only the rich can have access to the courts and the rest of us don't have access. And we all are led to believe that, gee, if we only had enough money, or if we could only get a good lawyer, we could enforce our rights. And we feel that we as individuals are to blame because we're not able to go into court and get access to it. But the truth of it is that even if you have a lot of money, and even if you have a good lawyer, that doesn't mean you're going to win.
But if you don't have a lot of money, there's no way you can win a case.
Do you know that 97% of the people in this country who are accused of a felony, rather than going before a jury and taking a chance, they plead guilty, even though half of them are not guilty. They plead guilty.
Why?
Because if they go to trial, they have no hope at all of winning at all.
Why do they have no hope?
Because take the Regas brothers. They spent $100 million defending themselves, and they lost.
What did they say they did? What happened?
Well, they ran a company, and they took a lot of money, hundreds of millions of dollars out of the company.
Yeah.
Take Martha Stewart. Did she win or lose?
I guess she lost.
She lost. Can you name anyone other than O.J. who won?
Well...
They all lose.
And they all lose
because the system, the criminal system, means that when you are indicted, you go to jail. There's no way of getting out of it. You don't win. You have to settle because the judges have no right to cut the term. They can't. You can't do a deal with a judge. The judge is obliged to be tough and hit you with 40 years.
Even if you're innocent? I mean...
Well, no, you plead guilty, and therefore you lose your right to claim you're innocent.
You plead guilty because you don't think you have a case.
No, you plead guilty because it's rigged against you. The prosecutor is allowed to bribe witnesses and use them against you. Of course they are.
Not allowed to bribe.
Yes, they are.
They're allowed to?
Yes, they're allowed to.
How do they bribe witnesses?
They go in, they let the word out that we need a witness that will say something.
Yeah.
So the people in jail right now know that if they come forward and say, well, I heard so-and-so say something in the cell, then they get a deal with the prosecutor.
Wait, so you're saying the system is corrupt right from the beginning, right?
In the criminal area, it needs a total revamping. We have to, and I have, what I would like to do is to require that there be a budget for the prosecutor, and that he have to work within the budget, and that all of the expenses that are going to be incurred with today's prosecutions be paid by the voter today. So that would be a crimp in the ability of the prosecutor to go and line his own future political career by taking a lot of hapless victims and throwing them in jail and saying, gee, I'm a great prosecutor.
And that happens.
That happens all the time. I ran for Attorney General, and the woman from White Plains, Westchester County, was the prosecutor there, former prosecutor, and she was bragging about how her rate was so high. The way they get this rate is they get people paid off, and they promised them leniency if they...
Paid off to lie?
Yeah, well, of course. Well, I mean, the prosecutor doesn't necessarily know that, but they have the ability to pay by getting someone out of jail.
Wow.
And then these people will tell anything to get out of jail.
Okay, so you ran for Attorney General of New York State?
Yes, in the year 2006, and I could not get on the ballot, so I said, oh boy, this thing stinks. Why can't I get on the ballot? Well, I found out why, because you have to go through it to find out.
Okay.
We have two parties in New York State and anywhere else in the United States, and these two parties control the political process, and they work together to keep it under their control. Yeah. There's no argument between the Democrats and the Republicans on how we want restrictions to prevent third parties from developing. So one of them is that the two main parties do not have to solicit signatures for the people that they nominate. They can just pick a person out of Alaska, and they can put them up there with no signatures whatsoever, with a few people smoking cigars in the back room. They can name even a vice presidential candidate without a single signature of anyone, any voter at all. Because they have the apparatus, the clout of the party behind them. No, they are on the ballot in every state, and the state laws uniformly say that if you are on the ballot as a functioning party, you're allowed to have a convention at which you name the people there instead of going to the voters and asking them who they want. So there's only two functioning parties in this whole country. You can't, and isn't there room for a third or fourth? Well, there would be, but we have to, like I was attempting to get the nomination of the Green Party. Right. So I went to Albany, and I got the loudest applause for what I was doing, and yet a person that already was wanting that position and had been waiting for it for years got it. I got 40% of the vote, though, as a newcomer. They liked what I was offering. And I'm friends with the person that... so you couldn't get on the Green Party ballot? I'm just as happy that I didn't, because they weren't looking to win the election. They only were looking to get 50,000 votes for the gubernatorial candidate. And if they did, they would then be able to remain as a party and designate the next gubernatorial candidate without having to gather signatures. So that happened? No, they didn't get it. They didn't get that. So they lost. They have to go out once again. Every 2 or 4 years, they have to go out and gather signatures. Is this in some kind of constitution that you have to have a certain amount of signatures? Yes, the statute says in New York that we pick the hottest day of summer and say this is the day that you begin gathering signatures, and 43 days later you have to end your process of gathering signatures. We want you to gather 30,000 signatures in 43 days, and since you don't have a party and you're not allowed to pay per signature, you really pretty much need 1,000 signatures a day and do it yourself. Now, you can't do that yourself. Well, you can hire people to go out to the streets. But I went up to the Second Circuit saying that because you're not allowing me to pay per signature as most other states allow, it's an infringement on my right to get on the ballot, because now I have to pay people by the day, and they come back and tell me they couldn't get anyone. All right. I mean, we can talk about this, but the part I want to talk about is where you had your kind of spiritual political conversion from being a corporate lawyer to fighting for the people's rights. What happened was that I saw that when you go into court with all of the skills that are necessary, it doesn't help, because if you're lucky, you'll settle the case, and your client will take the few dollars that far less than he or she deserves, and walk away and go into retirement or go into the poorhouse. They don't get what they lost. They never do. It's very difficult, and they wait for 5 or 10 years, and they just take whatever they get and they walk away. So we haven't achieved any purpose at all, except the public thinks that because somebody is suing, that there will be a dramatic change. There never is a change. We need to have the government suing. So I'm saying that since the plaintiffs that I represent don't have the money to bring suit against the big companies, and since the government's only function is to enforce the duties of people, they're not really enforcing our rights. What we need is an attorney general with a duty of enforcing the rights of individuals. Right, and you're running, you want to be the Attorney General for New York City. For New York City, but I'm interested in, from being a corporate lawyer, what happened? What woke you up to this other... Well, from being a corporate lawyer, I went out on my own and I started helping small people. And I saw that no matter how much of my life I devoted to helping small people, it never changed small businesses, people. It never helped. It doesn't change anything. Why did you go from being a corporate lawyer to helping people? Well, when you're working for a major law firm, they tell you what to do. And if they have corporate law they want you to do, or if they want you to represent the Gestapo, you do whatever you have to do.
Even if these people are ripping other people off.
It doesn't matter. You're not allowed to voice your opinion.
You saw that.
Well, of course, you'll be thrown out.
You were working for Nixon's law firm?
Yes, yeah. But he came in after I did. He came in after I did.
You said you had lunch with Nixon once?
Yeah. We had a firm outing upstate. Up in Westchester County. We went to a country club over there. And I was in the line gathering food at a buffet, and I saw that Nixon was going to take off to a table. That table had only one open chair. It had three people seated, one open chair. So I hurriedly headed toward the chair so Nixon would then go to another table. And I went to that table with Nixon and had lunch with him.
And what did you say to Nixon?
Well, I said, Mr. Nixon, I've read every single book about you, because I had read at least 9 biographies.
This was after he was president?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
And the only thing I don't understand is what happened with Helen Gahagan Douglas. You read the books. You answer it for yourself.
Who
He
was
scared
Helen
me.
Gahagan Douglas? Who was that?
She ran against him in California for Congress, and he smeared her with communist taint. That was his one big thing. He dominated that election by calling her a communist dupe and stuff like that.
And he won that election.
And he won that election,
So
but he never could overcome that one.
What didn't you understand why he did that? What were you asking him? Why?
I knew what he did. I just wanted to see what he would say, and his reaction was like yours. I jumped too because he was so angry at what I said. I got off that subject right away.
So, but you're saying in general the government is really not looking out for the rights of the people. I mean, for instance, like the oil companies making more profit than they ever made, and the gas is higher.
Right.
How isn't government here to protect the rights of people? Why can't government say
it isn't?
We're putting a limit on how much oil companies can make, and we're going to give the profit back to the people to turn back the prices of gas?
We already have a statute in New York that says that the Attorney General has the right to sue to recover excess profits.
Yeah.
But they're not doing it.
Why aren't they doing it?
Well, because the whole thing is that the people in charge are not going to give money to campaigns to persons that fight them. The ones who give the money to the campaigns, like the banks and the oil interests and all that, they wind up with legislators that are captive, that really have very little that they can do except talk fraudulently and falsely to the voters to become reelected, but then...
So the politicians are being paid off, you're saying?
Well, it's an unfortunate thing that they can go into office, and I even made this effort to go into office, and I understand you try to get money from people, and then suddenly if you take money from people and now you are going to pass a statute that's contrary to your people that are putting you in office, you can't do it. So I have designed a petition for signature in New York City, and it could be adopted anywhere in any county, town, village, municipality in New York State. And it would require the town or the city to provide 100% campaign financing for anyone running for office, and prohibit the one running from office from even using his or her own money.
Yeah.
And not even gathering any
idea.
money, just until you exhaust the money that we give you, which will be in stages, to try to get the nomination, and so on, the petitions, all of these things would be in stages. That way we can have people running for office without having to raise money. And we can have people like you and me running for office where because we don't have hundreds of millions or hundreds of thousands to throw away, we have to go to people that do. But this will end that. When the rich pay the congressman $5,000 or $10,000 as a campaign contribution, they get back on the order of $1,000 for every dollar they contribute. What a waste of the nation's assets.
Wait, say that again. When
they
the
get
rich
back in goodies. They get back in statutes. They get back in lack of enforcement. 1,000 to 1. 1,000 to 1.
But so, if the oil companies making all this profit, record profits, what could be done?
Stop the oil depletion allowance. We give them 3/8 of everything they get as I think it's 3/8 an oil depletion allowance.
What does that mean?
3/8 of the income that they get is put into tax-exempt status. So
Why is that? Why
if
are
they get $100 million in revenue, $38 million is tax exempt. They call it an oil depletion allowance. It's just a gimmick, a political gimmick that's been there.
Why are they doing that?
Well, it's because the oil companies want that.
Yeah, but can't someone come and
How about
say,
you
look,
and me? How about you and me? How about a human depletion allowance that we're not going to live forever? Give us a human depletion allowance instead of an oil depletion allowance.
Well, can't a politician come in and say, look, we're not going to give you that depletion allowance
But the
anymore?
other politicians aren't going to vote for it.
But it's so corrupt.
Well, of course. Well, what about rural electrification 40 years after there's no longer a need for it? Why are we still
What is
paying?
that? Rural
we pay to have the country electrified in the rural area. We have government for the rural area. We still pay money for that. We still give farm subsidies. We give money to a lot of people.
Well, I would say the farmers need it.
Well, but the farmers no longer are on the land. It's the rich combines that are getting most of the money, including some of the politicians. I forget what names, but all of it is money. The whole thing is that America is a land of big money, and they're chopping it up and handing it out to the friends. And you and I are losing whatever we have. We're losing it, and there's a way of dealing with it. We've got to do that at the grassroots level. We've got to start and change things at the lowest level of government.
Okay, so this is where you have some plans about how to do that. So tell us how to do that.
Okay.
What's the first thing we can do?
Well, we need to have an attorney general representing the interests of the human beings, the homeowners, the small business people, the residents, I said citizens, residents, the retired, the employees, the smaller people need help. We need to have somebody we can drop in on and say, look, the bank is ripping me off. Every time I pay, they say I haven't paid. They're hitting me with more and more fees.
Right.
So the attorney general for that town, if we had an attorney general, would say, well, look, it's just one instance. Maybe you can cure it. I'll make a call.
Yeah.
But if 50 people in the town come in and they have the same problem, then the attorney general will bring a suit and stop the practice. How about the people that fax you and you can't stop them? An attorney general could do something about that. So there's a lot of things that are useful, that'll be helpful to the public. But most of all, it would be a check so that the prosecutor doesn't go wild. It's the natural enemy of a prosecutor.
The attorney general
is a natural enemy. They're both going to be vying for votes.
The prosecutor, though, is defending the rights of the state, and the prosecutor and the attorney general defends the rights of the people.
If you were a small person in a town and you were just trying to survive, and you have no job and you have no hope, and you hear that the prosecutor is now going after a member of your family and you don't have any money to defend them, or you have a town attorney general that's suing a big company and they're going to buy health care for you with the money, who is more apt to get votes during the next election?
So an attorney general for the people would even go after health companies who don't pay insurance on things that they should.
Absolutely.
So
so
the attorney general for a town would stand for the people and the
at government expense, because you can't afford to go into court.
And the prosecutor stands for the right of the government.
The government is Mr. Cheney, and Mr. Cheney decides that they no longer want you around. So they then bring a criminal proceeding, because the prosecutors are all doing their work on a discretionary basis. A prosecutor does not have to sue anyone, doesn't have to bring a criminal proceeding. They elect to go after whoever they go after. So there's a political thing involved in that in many instances.
But isn't the prosecutor defending the rights of the people because the state are the people?
Well,
I mean, isn't that what's supposed to...
In the same way that Kane and Obama are representing the rights of the world and whatever, it's all rhetoric. You're not saying anything when you're saying that. Prosecutor selects and they wreck the person's family. People can't afford it. The guy has to plead guilty. He goes to jail for 20 years or 15 years. He's a convicted felon. He loses his right to vote. The family breaks up. It's a horrible consequence. And 97% of the people who are indicted plead guilty because they know that if they go to trial, they will lose and get a sentence 4 times as long.
Wow. And you've seen this over and over again.
Everyone knows that. Everyone knows that. That's just a given. That's a given. That's our system right now. Yeah. Well, it works. We have a lot of people in jail, and we have a law and order mentality. We want somebody with law and order. Thompson, Law and Order, right? We're gonna get these bastards that are.
So you say one way to stop it is having an attorney general for the people,
right? And
paid by the government.
And he would audit the prosecutor to make sure at random that the prosecutor isn't doing some dirty tricks.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you like Obama as a politician?
I do, and I don't have any faith that he is going to be able to overcome the elected legislators that are already being financed by the same group that I'm concerned about. What's he going to do? He's going to tell Congress, look, I want you to pass this law. Why didn't Pelosi pass it already?
Why didn't she pass it?
Because she's with the other side. She's really joined the other side.
Pelosi, she said she'd stand up for the rights of the people.
Well,
and
that's all rhetoric.
So no one's here standing up to the oil companies at all. There's actually
nobody is enforcing your rights. What about the rights of Americans to have jobs? Why are we allowing these jobs to go to other countries? Walmart is sending these jobs to other countries, and Walmart.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about Walmart again, because you're saying you did some investigation to Walmart.
Walmart has a deficit of about $50 to $100 billion a year.
Billion. So they're losing that much money.
They're losing money only if you view this from an accounting standpoint.
Oh, on the books you're saying
you have to view everything from an accounting standpoint. We have rules for the presentation of financials.
Wait, on the books it looks like they're losing $100 million.
No, on the books they have written the books in such a way to make it look like they're making 10 or 20 billion a year.
But if they're losing that much a year, how are they in business?
Because if a bank is breaking even and then goes to Colombia and gets some drug money and brings it into the bank, then the bank shows a profit. But you and I know that's a false profit.
So what is Walmart doing exactly?
Walmart is buying below cost.
Okay.
And that's illegal. They're buying below the manufacturer's cost. And that's illegal under the Robinson-Patman Act. And under the Sherman Act. It's illegal.
Well, it's up to the manufacturer to...
No, you can't do that because it destroys competition.
But why would a manufacturer sell it to someone below the cost that it makes?
The reason is that if they don't, someone else will. So that why would a manufacturer...
But the manufacturers lose.
Okay, get this now. Let's say a manufacturer is a bottling company.
Yeah.
Coca-Cola. Why would they buy another bottling company when they already have so many Cokes?
Yeah.
It's just putting more money into market share.
Wait, but I don't understand. If a manufacturer, it costs a certain amount of money to make a product, right?
They stop their competitors from servicing that market and hope their competitors go out of business as a result.
But they lose money.
They do, but they're only investing in the market. They're investing in market share. So that's what the answer is, that they don't like it, but if they don't do it, they're afraid they're going to go out of business because someone else will do it. So we need to have a government enforcing the law prohibiting that conduct.
Right, so Walmart goes in, buys the product
at below cost.
So they save a lot of money.
They offer it to the people in town, and the people buy it up and at the same time are slitting their own throats, and they're losing their jobs when they buy at Walmart.
Right. Because they're putting everyone out of business.
That's right. It's crazy.
So what do you want to do?
You need enforcement of law.
So what would you do if you were...
As Attorney General, I would go in and stop the practice. I would enforce these laws, because if you don't have government enforcing the laws, you'll have the rich taking advantage of them and the poor being unable to do a goddamn thing about it. You need somebody paid by the government to go in and enforce these laws. You don't need more laws. You need enforcement, that's all. But not against these hapless people that are being criminalized.
Right.
We need it against the big companies that are stealing America.
And that's what you would do.
Yes. Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Carl.
Okay.
I really appreciate that. What else do you want to do? We have just a few minutes left. What other things you see as possible?
I've got a free college idea.
Yeah.
Any town in the United States, I can bring a free college in, but it's good only for the residents. There's no cost of tuition. There's no cost of books, and it will provide remedial high school education for those that need it.
I see. So free college for small towns.
Free college, but it's only in. Well, it could be a larger town. It could be, but.
And that will just help educate people more.
Well, it would be a college education for nothing. Is that of any value?
No, that would be great.
You know what the problem with today's college education is? That it costs so much more than you're ever going to get as a benefit in most cases. You can't get the benefit by plowing $70,000 a year for 4 years into a college education, plus the loss of income for that period of time, and the student loans that you can't get away from in bankruptcy. You have people becoming slaves now to a system of an overpriced educational system of dubious benefit, especially when you look at what they can earn now in relation to what they have to pay to get the education.
Yeah, that's another
So there's another thing here. Let us have an equivalency college where I can charge nothing. I can give a free equivalency college with no tenure of the professor, no campus. Do you know that Harvard Law School pays its law professors $2,000 an hour to teach?
They do?
They only teach 3 hours a week, 100 hours a year, 200,000. I'm assuming.
That's pretty good.
Well, that's $2,000 an hour. That's not
really
bad.
Great.
That's twice as much as the top lawyer in Wall Street earns.
So you're running for the Attorney General. What do we need to do to support you for Attorney General of New York City?
Well, I'm having petitions that are being signed to put me on the ballot as the New York City Attorney General at the same time that we have a commission to investigate 9/11.
What do you say about 9/11?
9/11 needs to have an investigation with the subpoena power so we can find out what happened.
What do you think happened?
Well, what I think happened was that the powers that be, and we don't know who exactly did it, but undermined America's reaction and stopped the Air Force from preventing what was going on by a series there were games that were being played at the same time, air games and so on. So we don't know exactly who did it, but I think we need an investigation. But one thing is that 7 World Trade Center came down without even an airplane hitting it, and that is just
it wasn't because the foundation got destabilized by the polling.
Well, let's have experts and let's go in and find out.
And why do you think? Okay, so if there's some like weird thing behind World Trade Center 7, what would be the reason of pulling it down?
Well, the reason of pulling it down, it was the headquarters for a lot of lawsuits against rich people, and all of those records were destroyed. And also there was a lot of money in one of the buildings, a lot of bonds that never were accounted. $1 trillion worth of bearer bonds were lost, and gold beneath the building. Money.
How can people get in touch with you?
My phone number 212-307-4444.
And your website?
My website, lawmall.com.
Lawmall?
Yeah, LAWMALL.com. Or carlperson.com.
Person,
P-E-R-S-O-N.
Thank you, Carl. I appreciate the conversation. This is Alan Steinfeld for New Realities, talking to Carl Pearson. Please support him for Attorney General of New York. Call those numbers, look at that website, and email me at newrealities@earthlink.net. And look at my website, newrealities.com. Thank you. See you later.